Hi, everyone, and welcome to Trade and Tariff Tuesdays, Avalara's new webinar series on the Trump administration's tariffs and their impact on trade compliance with Mexico, Canada, and China. My name is Ashley, and I will be your host today. Before we dive in, I just have a couple housekeeping items. First, just a friendly reminder that Avalara cannot provide legal or tax advice. On your screen is our safe harbor policy. Please take a moment to review that while I continue with some additional items. We are recording today's event, so if you want to share it with a colleague or listen to it again, you'll receive that recording later today. The console you're looking at can be customized. Feel free to move or resize the windows. The additional resources section contains related resources, including today's slide deck. There are several ways to engage with our presenters and fellow attendees today. First, if you have any questions, you can submit them using the Ask a Question box. We will save time at the end for Q&A. You can also submit troubleshooting questions there. Second, you can join our attendee chat. You can click the icon at the bottom of your screen with two chat bubbles to bring that up. We encourage you to introduce yourself, network, and discuss today's topic. So let's kick off the conversation with where you're calling in from and what the weather's like today. I'm calling in from the Midwest. It's currently -8 degrees out. And then third, you can react to the presentation by clicking the emoji icon on the bottom, and our presenters on the back end can see those. And then lastly, just a reminder that this webinar is designed to be interactive, quick. It's just scheduled for 30 minutes, so therefore it is not eligible for CPE credit. We will have a few poll questions, but those are just for engagement and fun. So you can engage with those a little later. All right, that's all I have for housekeeping. So let's meet today's presenters. First, we are joined by Shane Bogdan, Director of Sales Cross-Border at Avalara, and George Trantas, Senior Director, Global Marketplaces at Avalara. George and Shane, I'll hand the presentation over to you.
Awesome, thanks, Ashley. No, it's nice to meet everybody, and thanks for everybody for jumping on. I'm our Director of Cross-Border Sales at Avalara. Been in the cross-border space for 12 years. George, good to see you.
Hi, great seeing you. And I've been here at Avalara 5 years, and I've been doing cross-border on and off for 25 years between different companies. So great to be here with you, Shane.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we have 30 minutes, so let's get through. We have a lot to cover over the past 2 weeks. So first off, again, thanks everybody for joining. This is our first Trade and Tariff Tuesday. We're looking to make this a recurring session over the following weeks and months. Unfortunately, you may not see George and I on every single session, but we will have guests come in and out. But as everybody's aware, trade policy shifts are happening overnight, and really they're happening within hours, impacting supply chains, costs, compliance strategies. And really our goal at Avalara is to keep everybody informed on the latest trade changes so your business can stay proactive, prepared, and ahead of disruptions for you and your clients. So again, this is our first Tuesday with guests to join us over future sessions. This is really meant to be a resource for our attendees, so feel free to share any future topics you'd like addressed here. And if you're also interested in being a guest, please let us know. Your feedback will help make this series grow and for others to learn. So here are the topics we'll be covering today. A lot of this is going to be in relation to the timeline over the past 2 weeks. But before we dive into what's happening and how we can kind of navigate these shifts effectively, George, I'm going to kick it over to you for a quick poll question.
Perfect. So let's open it up. What's the current de minimis threshold for products coming in from the U.S. to China? From China. Sorry, I've lost my voice a little here over the last week, so I apologize. We'll keep this open for a minute. Feel free to answer these, and then we'll go on. Obviously, we'll call this a trick question. Normally, it would be a pretty straightforward question, but as the changes happen pretty rapidly, we'll see how this goes. We've got about a quarter of the people have answered. We'll give another 15 seconds, and we'll move on. All right, let's, got about half the people have answered the question. All right, we're gonna short format. So we've got some well-informed people here. We've got some people that definitely have seen the news. So the answer would have been, Shane, last week, $0. It's back to $800, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, as of the 7th, it's back up to the $800 de minimis.
Yeah. So as we talk about, as we build these slides, we actually have to change some of these things real time. So Shane, I think this is where, what's the latest in the news? Let's take that. Let's let you take that one.
No, for sure. So, I mean, listen, this is being coined as trade whiplash. So whoever was the first one to get this in the market, maybe they'll be getting some royalties here. Who knows? But why the whiplash over the past 2 weeks? That's really the question, and for everybody here. So the U.S. is considering significant trade policy changes, primarily aimed at curbing fentanyl and illegal immigration. But as we've already seen, these shifts are already disrupting supply chain and trade relations. So over the past week, there have been new tariffs, removal of de minimis, retaliatory actions against key trading partners of ours, notices of sweeping trade changes not yet announced. But really, we'll give you now kind of a key breakdown over the past 2 weeks here in timeline format. So I'll kind of skip through these. But really, this all started on February 1st. The announcement came out of new tariffs that were set to go live on February 4th. Key main pieces here were Canada and Mexico with 25% tariffs, a 10% additional tariff on China, as well as the suspension of de minimis. And just a refresher on de minimis allows shipments valued under $800 to enter the U.S. free from duty and import taxes. So these were announced on the 1st. Wild 48 hours. George, you and I were both at our kickoff, and texts were going bananas on that day. So February 3rd then hits. Wild day. Morning. Retaliatory tariffs were issued by Canada on U.S. imports. I don't know if anybody follows social media, but there were some creative things Canadians were putting up in relation to the U.S. liquor being pulled off shelves of the LCBO sites in Ontario. But by that afternoon, Mexico and Canada tariffs were delayed for the negotiations until March 4th. Both countries offered concessions to focus on border enforcement and fentanyl control initiatives. On the 4th, China proposes counter tariffs that would begin on February 10th. Now, on February 7th, I find this an interesting day, as the White House reinstated de minimis until, quote unquote, adequate systems are in place to fully and expediently process and collect tariff revenue. So for all the trade folks who are following and are on the call, this has been really a key topic of speculation over the past 6 months on how, if de minimis would be removed, how would the actions of CBP and other agencies properly process this level of volume under new scrutiny. Now, U.S. will likely eliminate the de minimis exception for products made or shipped from China once this processing is adequately in place. But again, this has been a real key bipartisan topic as imports under de minimis threshold. Last year, CBP reported they were up to $1.34 billion in 2024. George, any estimate what they were back in 2015?
It's a great question. I don't have a clue. Tell me what.
Call me 134 million in 2015. So just put in perspective, 134 million in 2015. As of the end of last year, 1.34 billion. So you can see why there is scrutiny on this topic. February 10th hits, 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports announced. That's effective March 12th. Previous trade agreements on steel and aluminum have been revoked. So this is now affecting key trading partners in relation to the EU, Japan, Canada, Mexico, and a much longer list as well. The White House really is saying that these new tariffs are necessary for national security, as domestic production has declined in recent years on both steel and aluminum. And a quote, I'll pull another quote up here. The U.S. does not want to be in a position where it would be unable to meet demand for national defense and critical infrastructure in a natural emergency. So all of these are falling under Section 32 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. February 13th, the most recent here, the White House orders a reciprocal tariff investigation to pressure foreign nations with higher tariffs on U.S. goods. Now, further details here are to be announced. These will not be imposed immediately, but the White House is giving other countries time to adjust. But again, this is all full uncertainty, all TBD at the moment. So, George, where have we landed?
Great question. So as you can see, China has had a series of retaliatory moves against us. So one, we basically we applied all these duties and tariffs to China, Hong Kong, which is an additional 10% effective February 4th. De minimis has been temporarily removed. And then China has stated they're going to put retaliatory tariffs on us as well on February 10th. I don't know if we have the full details on that, but the trade, as we know, the trade deficit between China and America is quite sizable. So if you're a manufacturer and you want more information, leave a note in the chat so we can follow back up on a different session on that. I think today we're going to focus more on where we are from a B2C and a B2B move, or direct to consumer, I should say. And so if you look at Canada and Mexico, all changes have been put on hold to March 4th. And then if you look at other ones, we've got some other comments here. 25% ad valorem tariff on steel and aluminum, obviously directly targeting manufacturing and how do we increase, or in Trump's word, how do we increase U.S. production of these things? And then President Trump has signed multiple memorandums to pursue reciprocal tariffs on U.S. trading partners. So I think as we really look at where this is going, it's really, how do we change these things? We put this information as of February 17th. When we were building these slides yesterday, we were literally changing these things as we were going. So this is a day by day, hence why we're doing these monthly or these weekly meetings. And we really want your feedback on what would you guys want to hear on the next sessions and the future sessions. So as changes happen, we will do these blog posts and information, but we want to make sure you guys are aware and can join us anytime.
Yeah,
Shane,
and I think just just to double click on this slide. I mean, I think there's still this uncertainty right now. The prospective effective date of this March 4th for Canada and Mexico is really all eyes are really currently on this. And then the other big question really revolves around what was stated last week about these reciprocal tariff announcements. What does that mean? What are other countries going to be changing, et cetera? But again, all of these things are changing hourly. So, we were at Manifest last week, and the key topics were full trade uncertainty currently right now on what's going to happen. But the other piece was, how do organizations and clients stay proactive with these changes in terms of being able to adjust duty rates on a dime, as well as additional pieces of information such as HS10 classification codes, as additional requirements for data are going to be coming down the pipe for clearance methods. So that kind of leads into our next poll question number 2 here. So, based on the whiplash the past 2 weeks, again, kind of coming out of Manifest that I just mentioned, it's clear that businesses are rethinking their own trade adjustments. Now, again, we're using this as a forum for individuals and businesses to share what their insights are and how are they adjusting. So, question being, what changes are you making to stay proactive during these times of uncertainty? And the question being, are you planning to adjust your supply chain due to pending global chain changes, relation to duty, tariffs, regulation changes, in any of the following ways?
And Shane, while they're filling out the survey here, quick question came in from looks like Sean Hood or Shan Hood. Does the China tariff apply to new orders in progress, already shipped, and then what's the timing? And I think this is always a tricky one because each trade regulation has specific methods of action. So typically it's from the day it's shipped, but that doesn't always mean it's going to apply forward. So it also depends on, is it the clearance type? And so there's several other things in motion here. So on specifics, we're more than happy to follow up with you. And we have tools built so you can actually see real-time tariffs and duties as they apply. It is the biggest challenge here.
Yep. Okay, so the initial respondents here, let's see. Looks like the 2 main things are diversifying suppliers and manufacturers outside of China to reduce risk. Obviously, country of origin of things being manufactured and shipped from China are of the highest scrutiny at the moment. It looks like number 2 here, tied for that top one, is rethinking distribution strategies, new fulfillment center locations, carriers, shipping routes. And then 3rd here is switching to local suppliers and manufacturers. Move on here. So implications to your business. So, how to keep up with these changes happening. The interesting piece here is, the inability to adjust to trade compliance can lead to serious trade issues. Even before the past 2 weeks occurred, we did a joint study with Reuters across 200 retailers globally And 55% of the respondents as part of this joint study found that cross-border trade was already challenging. And they provided, some top four issues here of shipments being held up in customs, penalties or fines on non-compliance, under or overcharging customs duties and import taxes, poor customer experience and cart abandonment, most likely dealing with the inability to calculate duties and taxes at checkout, resulting in an intransparent conversion at checkout. Right here, though, is really what we've seen when we broke it down even further. So shipments delayed in customs, 43% said this was one of their biggest cross-border compliance challenges. Customs, regulatory compliance, or the inability to provide HS codes on goods being imported, exported, et cetera. Added supply chain costs, added costs to tariffs and duties, and delivery costs here. So all of these you can kind of see here are in relation to duties, the inability to calculate or understand what duties are, and also compliance around the data that's being affixed to those parcels and those shipments, being HS classification codes, data, et cetera.
Shane, I'm going to pause you right here. So as we look at this, if we think about this from a retail standpoint, from a direct consumer standpoint, we know the Sheins of the world, the Temus, the China marketplaces that are inbound US take up a lot of lanes in the customs and potentially duties and delays in shipments if they decided to impose this. From your past experience, what drives conversion the most on a sale? Like if you're going to look for what's the best way to drive conversion in a cart from a consumer experience?
Yeah, it's being able to provide a fully landed cost quote. So what that is if you are a U.S. Consumer, what is the thing when you get to a checkout that you want to see? You want to see all the costs associated with that good as you are checking out. You don't want to get to your parcel gets to your doorstep and the nice postman or UPS, FedEx, whoever it is, say, hey, you owe an additional $20 on this good that you just purchased. You want to see all those costs up front. So one of the key stats here is the number one driver for cart abandonment is not providing transparent cost at checkout. And again, what that means is the product cost, the duties and taxes, anything from the international side, and the shipping and handling. Because again, you want to be able to see what is the full cost of that good that you're purchasing at checkout, so you're not surprised once it gets to your doorstep.
Yeah, and I think the shipments, we have several comments on shipments delayed in customs. And I think this is really a clearance methodology situation. So if you're doing a bulk clearance of if you're shipping something on a boat from China to America, you should expect some sort of delays if CBP decides to implement, basically clearance of every single item. If you're using express shipments on single items, so a direct consumer move, much easier to get into the country. It comes in a pre-cleared methodology. And if you're using type 86, in section 321, that's where I think the biggest change will happen. So as we probably get into future sessions, we probably should, and we have some licensed custom brokers on our staff. We have some experts in trade compliance. That's something that we'll get into in another section, is how do types of clearance affect delays? Yeah,
and I think that's a good point, George. I mean, I think everything that's coming out of this over the past 2 weeks has been, again, backtrailing on 6+ months of news here. And if we go back to that de minimis China inbound parcels, like you're mentioning here, type 86, well, that is basically going to be adjusted at least for the China inbound parcels, once they figure out what is the proper clearance method and how do they process these. Last week, once the de minimis was basically suspended, there were two options here. One was formal entry 1, which was for anything greater than $2,500. And the second was informal, which was entry type 11. The key thing here, though, is about these is you're going to be required to provide additional information on both of these clearance methods. So again, it's imperative to understand what is the COO on those goods that are on there. What is the proper HS classification code? Do you have all the proper descriptions of what that merchandise is? Are there validation valuations on those goods, as well as duty calculations? But now is the time to really prepare, because as part of this whole processing, they want to see the data as these parcels are coming into the network and into the states.
Yeah, and I think I think one of the questions in the comments we'll get is like, how's this going to affect certain, the aluminum tariff? Is that going to affect finished goods or raw materials? We do have, we would need more specific information from you. So if you've got some specific questions, we can reach out after this webinar. But there are a lot of things that will be affected. And I think what I look at from my days of being a retailer, working at eBay, working at different places, you should always have multiple shipment methods in place ready to go, because from our time at Border Free, we would have 5 to 7 carriers available to go into any country at any time. So if you're relying on one entry method and one carrier, you're probably at the greatest risk of having something delayed to a customer or to your business. So having multiple entry methods and multiple shipment methods is really key right now. And this is where you really should be spending time making sure you're prepared.
Yeah. Diversification is always key to hedge against any risk on one bucket. So
we'll go to the next slide.
Yep. So we kind of talked about these top 5 issues expected to become of cross-border supply chains based upon what we just went through on the previous ones. Are these effects of a recession, inflationary pressures, cost of shipping, U.S.-China tensions, international supplier stability? So again, these are coming from the list of, a platform of 200 worldwide retailers that we surveyed on this. But I think, we're kind of coming up to it. So George, just can you give us an overview quick here on how we can kind of help?
Yeah, I think this is sort of the keys to success to Avalara. So I won't read the quote from Craig, but if you look at what we do and how we do this every day with tax and duties, now tariffs for cross-border, Avalara cross-border delivers real-time calculations of customs duties and import tax and automates the tariff classification codes. So, on February 4th, we began making all the updates for the China new rules put in place. And on February 7th, we basically stripped them all out to match what was coming in. So our system is designed to provide real-time output, and there's multiple ways to connect. So there's APIs. So if you're already an Avalara customer and using Avatax, this is actually built in behind the Avatax system. So cross-border sits there natively. You just need to talk to your account rep, and if you just there's gonna be a slide that asks for a follow-up after this. We're more than glad to show you how this works. But we also have self-service tools. So I know there's a bunch of questions coming in. Is my product going to be affected? Is this product going to be affected? The answer is it's really hard to determine until you actually determine the HS code, determine the use of that product. So there are some exceptions where products can have multi-use. And so in those cases, duties and tariffs may switch. So it's really hard for us to say an exact tool, but we've acquired companies and technology that allow us to do this real time, and you guys to do it real time as well. So I think that's the most exciting part of this change is, I remember 20 plus years ago, I used to have the SRG manual. So the people that have been in cross-border a long time, you would literally go to you flip paper books open and find the codes. We've automated that process to allow you to work faster in real time. So if you've got questions, please check that box at the end of this session for us to follow up.
Yeah. And George, just on those dates there, I think it's worth noting just to understand, the content team that we have on our side is over 260 individuals, ensuring that we're staying up to speed in terms of what changes lie ahead. And I know definitely in terms of the Canada situation where they were going to impose tariffs on U.S. goods coming into exported U.S. into Canada, our team was all over that. And in fact, that they had already looked, done the due diligence to put those tariff rates as ready to go as if they were to if Canada was to move forward with it. But in all fairness, that we turned those off behind the scenes. So even if they turned them on, we were ready to go here. Again, we have a team of over 260 individuals making sure that we are looking at the registrar of when these the annexes are provided, additional goods, and to your point, what HS codes are going to be impacted the most. We are here to make it easy for everybody. And, just quickly, here are the key things that we work on in terms of with Avalara where we can help is the duty and tax calculation, tariff code classification, obviously, in terms of what we've been talking about, HS10s, and also trade restrictions management. But I'd like to open this up to really, I guess the poll question number 3 here is, would you like a follow-up from an Avalara representative? And we'll just do this quickly and then move on to a Q&A session. one more minute. George, I don't know if you're already looking at some of the Q&A at the moment.
Yeah, we've got some. Jeff Roth asked a great question. Would it make sense to obtain a CTPAT certificate? And that's a customs trade partnership against terrorism certificate. I think there's a lot of we've used a lot of abbreviations, so I apologize. So COO is country of origin. De minimis is the point at which a tariff or duty is assessed at a country. But yeah, I think it does make sense to get the CTPAT certificate if you can. Not everybody qualifies, but it does make customs importing easier. It makes you a trusted partner. I like to use it. It's the nexus or the global entry of cross-border trade. So please, if you have that ability, I would definitely recommend that. There are some categories that probably would be exempt as well. So that's a great question. We have, let's see here. Is the 25% tariff on steel manufactured in places from China currently in effect, Shane?
At the current moment, it is not. This goes into effect. Let me pull up notes here. March 12th.
Okay, perfect. And that's one that is going to be probably on the day it happens. Anything that's not in the country will be affected. So this is ones where depends on the type of the way the rules always are written. It's usually from the day it goes implemented. If it's in shipment or in flight, it usually is exempt. But I don't know this is a specific rule on aluminum and raw materials. So there may be it's effective immediately wherever it's at in process. So that's where a little more information is always needed as well.
Yeah. And I see a note here. Somebody had mentioned they want to see the information, quote unquote. How will they use the data? And I think this is a key piece here. George and I see this all the time. We're seeing data come in from importers, exporters, and it's actually wild how little data is actually being provided on manifests for any sort of clearance, et cetera. And I think this is going back to the whole bipartisan piece of they need to see the data in terms of what is actually coming into the country, how, if it has the proper HS10 on it, being able to apply the appropriate duty rates on those. Previously, the data that's been included in terms of on manifests and other documents just has really been lackluster. And again, I think this is a part of the whole crackdown in terms of there is the fentanyl, security, et cetera, just having a clear understanding of what is being imported into the country. Now, that said, how will they be looking at this? How will they be able to process it and keep up? This is part of that whole piece on why this was all rolled back on the 4th, at least for China inbound.
Yeah, and there was a question in here. Bettina asked, will the China tariff have any exceptions other than the de minimis? I think the answer is yes and no. And so when you raise de minimis, you're creating basically on a direct order to a consumer. The price will actually have a significant impact. And this is actually a good question: is what becomes the duty price on a B2B import? It's typically the value or the cost of the good. On a B2C order, it typically is the value you sold the good for. And so these are some things you got to think about. So pricing will be affected based on the size and scale you're bringing it in at, and then maybe the time and energy it takes to get through clearance. So depending on the type of clearance, there may be additional small dollars added to each item to clear an item. So I think the value or the exceptions will be greater than we want to expect. That's why you got to prepare for this. It's a challenging one until they're in place. I think 6 months to a year after they're live, you know what the expectations is. But I always think about, are you pre-ticketing your items on a retail goods? So if you pre-ticketed your items 6 months in advance of a clothing manufacturer, well, that clothing may be 20 to 30% more expensive by the time it lands here. So how do you figure that out into your price? I know Shane and I have done some projects in previous tariff issues, and we've had to do some ticketing changes for customers live. So I know we're running out of time. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you. So keep adding them. I apologize. We're definitely a little short on time on these.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're at time here, but I do just want to point everybody on here to some key resources that we have. Again, sign up to make sure that you're involved on these webinars on a weekly standpoint. It's our first link here. But also we have 3 really key blogs here that are being updated basically on a daily basis and as trade news comes out. So here are links We are ensuring that these are updated with the latest and greatest information on there. We also have a resource pages and also market trends that we've put out as well in conjunction with Reuters here. So we really appreciate everybody's time on the call today. Fantastic audience. And our offer stands. If there's any topics that you'd like to be addressed moving forward, please do not hesitate to let us know. Reach out with any questions. And if you are interested in joining us for guest appearance, etc., we'd also love to have you. So again, hopefully this is helpful. We want to make individuals aware of what's happening. Communication is key. So appreciate it. And thanks everybody for the time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I will wrap us up really quick. Thanks, Shane and George. So everyone will receive a post-event email later today with a link back to this console so you can get the recording and you can get those additional resources. And like Shane and George mentioned, this is a weekly webinar series, so we hope to see you back again next Tuesday. That post-event email will have instructions on how you can sign up for future sessions. You can sign up for the next 5 or 6 weeks all in one fell swoop. So we hope to see you back. And then there's also a post-event survey that you'll see right after the webinar ends. We'd love to hear feedback on what you want to hear in the coming weeks. So thanks again for attending, and that concludes today's webinar.